Hey folks, DC here from DC's Gadgets. It is Tuesday the 17th of March. Happy St. Patty's Day. I want to talk about a topic I've brought up more than once. What do you do when there's events and circumstances that will happen eventually to every beekeeper once you start keeping bees? Some things will happen in your first year and some things may not happen for years, but if you have bees long enough, eventually things are going to happen. So the topic I'm going to talk about today is moving bees, and then a little bit more on top of that besides that, but it's moving bees. So the typical advice that beekeepers are given when you want to move a beehive is 2 feet or 2 miles. And for the most part, that's pretty good. If you're moving bees across the yard and you're moving just a few feet, it's usually not a problem. They'll figure out where the box is and find the beehive. If you move them down the road a ways, I don't know if 2 miles is actually that important. I move bees between my house and my mother-in-law's house, and that's about a mile. And I haven't had problems with the bees, losing home. But short distances aren't good. If you move it across your yard like 100 yards, you're typically going to lose foragers. They'll go back to the old location. Although I have moved bees in a single yard, but I do it. When I do it, I close the box up late at night. I'll move it, late at night or early morning, and I leave it closed up until late morning, so the bees in the box are kind of stressed out because they can't get out. And I'll reduce the entrance down extremely small, and I might face it right into a fence or straight into a bush or something. So when they come out of the entrance, everything is totally different and they reorient. And I've had success with that. So that's an option to move bees. So we did some stuff Sunday. We have to move some beehives in our club yard. And another option you can have if you're moving bees, you can leave behind a catch box. So let's say, for example, you've got 3 or 4 beehives on a specific location and you have to move them. And you have to move them in the middle of the day when foragers are out. What you can do is take a couple of honey frames, maybe a brood frame. You really don't need a brood frame. Take a couple of food frames, maybe some drawing comb. Stick those frames in a nuke box or just a single hive body, and put that in a location where one of the beehives was that you moved, and then move the main colonies. And the foragers coming back, at least once for that, the one that left is going to come right back to that box. But the ones that were next to it, within 3 or 4 feet of that one, they'll realize that there's no house to live in, but there's a box right there with bees, and they'll eventually go into that. And people call it a catch box. And I have done that before, and it works pretty good. So we had to move some bees Sunday, did it during the day, and I moved 2 beehives over about 5 feet. I really wasn't worried about them finding their location, and if some of them kind of drifted over between colonies, wasn't worried about that. Another box I had to move about 25 feet, and so that one I was kind of concerned that I'd lose foragers. So on the same hive stand where that box was, I had a 5-frame nuke with about 3 frames of bees, maybe 2.5 frames of bees. So my intent was to leave the 5-frame nuke behind, actually slid it over about a foot, so the foragers from the box I moved would come back and go into the 5-frame nuke box. And my hope and my thought was, being it was only about half full, there would be enough room for the foragers to get in there. It was about 4:30 on Sunday, and we're still on a schedule. Most of the bees are back in by 6. We have switched to daylight savings time, but typically between 6 and 7 o'clock, activity's done. So moved it over, set the nuke up, went and did other things. I had to go back to the yard because I was actually moving another box from the yard over to my mother-in-law's house. So I went back in the yard about 6 o'clock Sunday evening, and everything looked pretty good. I walked through all the beehives I moved. I saw traffic in and out. Pretty much every beehive in the yard had a little bit of traffic in and out. Some had a small amount of bearding. On the 5-frame nuke box, I had a cluster bearded up right above the entrance on the front of the box, maybe the size of a lemon, bigger than a golf ball, smaller than an apple. No, not a huge amount of bees, but nothing I was concerned about. So left everything alone. My thoughts at the time was things are going exactly as I hoped. I didn't see any bees clustered up on the stand where beehives had moved from. So I was pretty confident that the bees had found a place to live. So Monday evening I was back over at the yard again, just did a real quick walkthrough to check stuff. And everything looked pretty good except when I got back to that 5-frame nuke box. The entire front of the box was covered in bees, along with one whole side covered in bees. And I mean covered, you couldn't see the wood of the box. So I was concerned now. A couple thoughts went through my mind. One was, did the box that I moved, did the foragers go out all day Monday and try to go back to their old home location and end up in a nuke box? And that's a possibility. Another possibility was, did a feral swarm come into the yard and land on my nuke box trying to set up a house there? So I figured I better take a look inside the box, see what's going on. So put my gear on, popped off the top, and that nuke box was just jam-packed full of bees. Couldn't fit any more bees in it. And that's why they're outside. So I had to take some action. Figure if I didn't do something, they might all take off on me. So I grabbed the regular hive body out of the truck, 8-frame box out of the truck, went back in the yard, started setting that up, very carefully grabbing frames and moving them over. And after I grabbed the 3rd frame and moved it over, I saw on the bottom of the nuke box my marked queen dead. So now I have a quandary and a question. The queen is dead for a reason. Possibility is that so many foragers came back from the colony I moved into what they thought was their home, because this was pretty much in their old home location. But the queen in there didn't smell like their queen, so they killed her. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that I had a feral swarm move onto this side of the box, and they moved in and killed the queen. So what do I do? How can I determine which happened? Now think about this for a minute. There's a way I can figure out whether it was the foragers coming back that killed the queen, or if a rogue colony came in and brought a queen with them. And the way I will figure this out is, I'll go back in that box probably Thursday evening, and I'll look for queen cells. If I find queen cells, that tells me that whatever bees came in, whether it was a rogue colony or foragers from the other beehive, they killed the existing queen, and so they're queenless and they're making a queen. But if I go in there Thursday and I find no queen cells, then I'm concerned, because that would tell me that a rogue colony came in with a queen, and I don't want that queen because I have no idea where she came from. So this is something to consider, because we have seen this before. Excuse me. We have seen this before, and I've heard reports of it in various places of the state, that aggressive feral hives will take over a weaker colony and move in, and they'll bring their queen with them and just take over. And then, a few weeks' time, when that brood starts going, the attitude can drastically change. Where you had a nice, docile beehive, bees that are fun to work with, all of a sudden become totally evil. And I don't want to take that chance. So if I go in Thursday and I have no queen cells, then I'll probably wait until Sunday to do it as an exercise with the whole club. We'll go in Sunday and we'll shake all the bees out through a shaker box and exclude her. We'll find the queen and dispatch her. And I'll have some capped queen cells by that time. I might even have some mated queens, and we'll stick something new in there. So this is going to happen. Sooner or later it's going to happen to everybody. You're going to come up to your beehive someday and you might find a swarm hanging on the front of it. Or you may open up the box someday and find a dead queen in the bottom of the box. You got to make a decision. What are you going to do? If there's a queen in there and I try to introduce a queen, they're going to kill the queen I introduced, so that's not a good idea. I mean, I could put a capped cell in there and take a chance, but I think the method I'm going to use is, it suits my methods. I'm going to look for queen cells. If I find queen cells, I know what's happened. If I don't find queen cells, I know there's a queen in there. And if there's a queen in there and she's not marked, if there's a marked queen in there, it could be a swarm from our own yard. But if I find a queen in there and she's not marked, I have no idea where she came from, and I'm not going to take a chance on a feral queen being in my yard, and so we'll dispatch her. So, something to think about. Things that happen to every beekeeper sooner or later. Take care.